The Galactic Council made 3 critical mistakes the day they sent Sslyth the Devourer to kill Jake Morrison. First, they assumed that because humans were new to the galactic stage, they were soft, weak, easy to eliminate. Second, they believed their records were complete, that the intelligence dossier on human colony ships included everything relevant about the species. Third, and most catastrophically, they had no idea what a honey badger was. Sslyth slithered through the ventilation shaft of the agricultural station on Kepler 442b, his 30-foot serpentine body moving in perfect silence. His species, the Veracii, were the galaxy's premier assassins. For 12,000 years, they'd served as the Council's hidden blade, eliminating problems that diplomacy couldn't solve. Sslyth himself had ended 47 lives across 23 worlds. He'd killed warrior races, hive queens, and psychic chancellors. A single human farmer should have been laughably simple. The target was Jake Morrison, a terraforming specialist who discovered something he shouldn't have. Evidence that the Council had been deliberately sabotaging human colony efforts. 3 other colonies had failed under mysterious circumstances. Crops dying, water sources contaminated, always blamed on human incompetence, but Jake had found the patterns. The deliberate patterns. He had to die before he reported his findings. Sslyth's heat pits detected Jake's thermal signature in the habitat module below. Alone. Perfect. The Veracii's venom could liquefy internal organs in seconds, and his constricting strength could crush reinforced steel. This would be over in moments. He dropped through the vent grate with liquid grace, landing silently on the module floor. His forked tongue tasted the air, confirming his target's location. The human sat at a desk, back turned, studying holographic data streams. Completely unaware, Sslyth's body coiled, preparing to strike. His species had perfected the kill for millennia. 1 bite, that's all it would take. He launched forward, jaws unhinging to reveal fangs dripping with black venom. That's when he heard it. A sound that would haunt his nightmares for the rest of his considerably shortened life. A low, rattling growl that came from absolutely nowhere and everywhere at once. Not a large sound. Not particularly deep. But something about it triggered every predator instinct Sslyth possessed, screaming at him that he'd made a terrible, terrible mistake. Jake spun in his chair, eyes widening, but not with fear, with horror. Oh no.
Badger. No.
A black and white blur erupted from beneath the desk. Sslyth had 1 microsecond to process what he was seeing. A creature roughly the size of a small dog, with a distinctive white stripe down its back, charging at him with the energy of a supernova compressed into 20 pounds of absolute fury. The honey badger hit him like a missile. Sslyth was 3 times longer and outweighed the creature by 200 pounds. He was an apex predator, feared across the galaxy. He had venom that could drop the Sien war beast. None of that mattered. The badger's jaws clamped onto his neck with a force that shattered his scales. Claws. Claws that shouldn't have been able to pierce Veracii hide. Raked through his flesh like it was tissue paper. Sslyth tried to coil around the creature, tried to crush it, but the badger's loose skin allowed it to twist in his grip, biting and clawing with relentless, savage precision. Badger, release! Jake was shouting, trying to pull the animal off. He's had enough. Badger. But the honey badger had not, in fact, decided the snake had had enough. Sslyth managed to sink his fangs into the creature's shoulder, a killing dose of venom pumping directly into its bloodstream. He felt a moment of savage triumph. Then the badger's teeth found his spine. The crack was audible. God damn it, badger. Jake finally managed to grab the animal, hauling it back. The honey badger released reluctantly, its muzzle covered in blue-green Veracii blood, making a chittering sound that seemed almost disappointed the fight was over. Sslyth lay on the floor, paralyzed from the neck down, staring up at the human and his demon companion. Jake looked down at him with genuine sympathy. I'm so sorry. I tried to warn you. Once Badger decides something's a threat, there's no stopping him. He glanced at the creature, which was now licking its wounds. Also, you should know honey badgers are highly resistant to venom. Snakes are basically his favorite food. As Slyth's consciousness began to fade, his last thought was a simple one. The Council needed to update their files on humans, specifically the part about their pets. Jake Morrison sat in the detention field aboard the Council enforcer ship Righteous Clarity, watching Badger pace back and forth in his portable habitat. The honey badger looked annoyed at the containment but seemed otherwise unconcerned about their situation. Jake wished he could share that confidence. 3 Council security officers stood guard outside the field, keeping a very careful distance after Badger had bitten through his temporary cage during transport and sent 2 guards to the medical bay. Now he was in a military-grade containment unit designed for holding dangerous xenofauna. Badger had already figured out the locking mechanism twice. The door hissed open, and Ambassador Sslyth entered. A tall, crystalline being whose species, the Rail, were known for their logic and fairness. Jake had hoped that meant he'd get a fair hearing. The expression on Sslyth's faceted face suggested otherwise. "Mr. Morrison," Sslyth began, his voice chiming like wind through glass. "You killed a Council enforcer." "Technically, Badger killed him," Jake corrected. "And only because Slyth broke into my habitat and tried to kill me first. I call that self-defense. Slyth was conducting a legitimate security investigation. Sslyth was an assassin sent to silence me before I could report what I found." Jake pulled up his data pad, despite his restraints. "I have evidence that the Council has been sabotaging human colonies. The crop failures on New Kansas? Someone introduced a gene-specific pathogen. The water contamination on Armstrong? Deliberately poisoned. 3 colonies, Ambassador. 3 times humans were blamed for our own failures, but the pattern is clear." Sslyth's crystalline form seemed to dim. "You understand what you're suggesting? Such an accusation against the Council is exactly why you sent a Verashii to kill me instead of asking questions." Jake leaned forward. "How long has the Council been afraid of humanity? What did we do to make you want us to fail?" For a long moment, Sslyth was silent. When he spoke, his voice was quieter. "It's not fear, Mr. Morrison. It's caution. Your species advances rapidly, dangerously rapidly. In 200 years, you went from primitive combustion engines to faster-than-light travel. Most species take 20,000 years to achieve that. The Council has seen rapid expansion species before. They tend to become problems. So the solution is to cripple us? Make us think we're incompetent at colonization so we stay confined to our little corner of space." Jake felt anger rising in his chest. "You're not protecting the galaxy from us. You're protecting your power structure. We're protecting stability." Badger suddenly stood up in his enclosure, sniffing the air. His body went rigid, ears forward, that familiar low growl starting in his chest. Jake knew that stance. "Ambassador, you need to leave. Now. I'm perfectly safe behind." The wall exploded inward. Not metaphorically. The reinforced hull of the ship tore open like paper, and through the gap slithered something that made Sslyth look like a garden snake. It was easily 80 feet long, its scales shimmering with an oil-slick iridescence, its head the size of a cargo shuttle. Ambassador Sslyth made a sound like shattering glass. "Empress Nethics, this is a Council vessel. I am aware." The massive serpent hissed, her voice resonating through the chamber. "I am also aware that you killed my son. I am Verashii. We do not forgive. We do not forget." She was speaking to Jake, her enormous eyes fixing on him with murderous intent. "The little human who set his beast upon Slyth. I will consume you slowly. I will make you watch as I devour everyone on this ship. And then I will find your colony and—" Badger's enclosure shattered. The honey badger emerged like a black and white comet, launching himself directly at the Empress's face. "Oh no," Jake whispered. "Not again." Nethics reared back, more startled than hurt, and Badger landed on her snout, immediately biting down on her nostril with the grip of a vice. The Empress shrieked, a sound that reverberated through the entire ship, and began thrashing wildly. Jake dove for cover as the detention field failed, sparks flying everywhere. Through the chaos, he heard Ambassador Sslyth's horrified voice. What I asked that creature? Jake, pressed against the wall as a 60-ton serpent Empress tried desperately to dislodge 20 pounds of pure rage from her face, could only shout back, "That's Badger. And you really should have updated your files on Earth fauna." The righteous clarity was tearing itself apart. Empress Nethix, in her desperate attempts to remove Badger from her face, had smashed through 3 bulkheads, depressurized 2 sections, and sent the ship into an uncontrolled spin. Alarms screamed. Emergency lights flashed. Crew members fled in every direction, and Jake was pretty sure at least one escape pod had launched. And through it all, Badger held on. "Badger! Come!" Jake shouted, dodging as Nethix's massive tail swept through where he'd been standing. The honey badger completely ignored him, too focused on his new favorite activity, turning a galactic empress into a squealing, thrashing mess. Ambassador Sslyth grabbed Jake's arm, his crystalline form flickering with panic. "Make it stop. She'll destroy the ship. Have you met a honey badger? They don't stop. They literally fight bees for honey and shrug off cobra venom." Jake yanked free, running toward where Badger clung to the Empress's snout. The only thing that stops a honey badger is when they decide they're done. Nethix finally managed to slam her head against the wall hard enough to dislodge Badger. The honey badger tumbled through the air, landed on his feet with casual grace, and immediately charged back toward the Empress with a sound that could only be described as gleeful bloodlust. "No, you psychotic fur demon, we're leaving." Jake dove forward and scooped up Badger mid-charge. The honey badger squirmed in his arms, chittering with frustration, trying to get back to the fight. Nethix, bleeding from multiple bite wounds on her snout and looking absolutely scandalized that such a small creature had inflicted such damage, drew herself up to her full height. You dare." Yeah, ancient empire, lots of respect, you're very scary," Jake interrupted, backing toward the hole in the hull. "But here's the thing about humans, Empress. We've lived with predators our whole evolutionary history. We've been hunted by things with bigger teeth, stronger jaws, and more venom than you can imagine. And you know what we did?" He held up Badger, who was still squirming, desperate to get back into the fight. "We made friends with the craziest ones." Jake jumped through the hull breach. They tumbled into space, or more accurately, into the docking bay 3 levels down, thanks to the ship's orientation and internal gravity. Jake hit the deck hard, managing to keep hold of Badger through sheer desperation. Around them, Council personnel scattered. One security officer tried to aim a weapon, but took one look at Badger's blood-covered face and apparently decided discretion was the better part of valor. "Docking Bay 12. Sslyth's voice came through the ship-wide comm, surprisingly calm for someone whose vessel was falling apart. "Mr. Morrison, take Docking Bay 12. Your scout ship is there. Leave, now, before the Empress regains her composure." Jake didn't need to be told twice. He ran, Badger tucked under one arm like a very angry, very bitey football. The scout ship, the Persistence, his battered but reliable survey vessel, sat in the bay exactly where they'd impounded it. The boarding ramp was already lowering. "Why are you helping me?" Jake shouted toward the comm. A pause. Then Sslyth's chiming voice. "Because you were right. About all of it. The Council has become what it swore to prevent. A force that suppresses others out of fear rather than fostering growth. And because..." Another pause, longer this time. "Because if the galaxy is going to survive the next millennium, it needs humans. Your chaos, your unpredictability, your ability to bond with creatures that by all rights should terrify you." Jake reached the ship, scrambling up the ramp. "What about you?" "I'll face the consequences of my choice. Go, Mr. Morrison. And when you make your report about the Council's crimes, include everything. It's time for change." The ramp sealed behind him. Jake strapped into the pilot's seat, Badger immediately settling into his custom-made co-pilot bed. A nest of blankets and stolen socks. The honey badger yawned, showing blood-stained teeth, and closed his eyes as if he just finished a pleasant afternoon nap rather than a battle with the galaxy's most feared assassin species. "You're absolutely insane," Jake told him, punching in the launch sequence. Badger's response was to fart contentedly and start snoring. The Persistence launched into the black, leaving behind a crippled council ship and an Empress who would never, ever look at small Earth mammals the same way again. Jake had exactly 12 hours of peace before everything went sideways again. He was 3 jumps away from council space, heading toward the Independent Station Deep Reach where he could transmit his evidence to every news network in the galaxy, when the proximity alarm started screaming. "Oh, come on," Jake groaned, pulling up the scanner display. 15 ships, all Veracii design, all converging on his position. Apparently Empress Nethix had called for backup. "Badger, we have a problem." Jake pushed the engines to maximum, but the scout ship wasn't built for combat. The Veracii vessels were faster, better armed, and there were 15 of them. Badger opened one eye, assessed the situation with the profound wisdom of a creature who'd once fought a porcupine and won, and went back to sleep. "Great. Thanks for the support." The comm crackled to life. Nethix's voice, cold and precise now rather than the shrieking fury from before. "Human, you have embarrassed the Veracii people. You have made us look weak before the Council. For this, your death will be legendary in its suffering." Jake checked his fuel levels, calculated jump vectors, and realized he had exactly 0 good options. "Look, Empress, I get it. But technically Badger bit you, not me. Maybe we can work something out. Your creature is an extension of you. You will both." The transmission cut off. All 15 Veracii ships suddenly altered course, breaking pursuit formation. "What the?" Jake checked his scanners again. A massive energy signature was approaching. Big, really big. Then he saw it. A human dreadnought dropped out of FTL like a hammer from heaven. The Indomitable Spirit, one of the Earth Defense Fleet's newest vessels. Behind it came a dozen more human ships, cruisers, destroyers, and support vessels. Jake's comm lit up with a new transmission. A weathered human face appeared on screen. Admiral Sarah Rodriguez, her steel-gray hair pulled back in a regulation bun, her expression carved from granite. "Mr. Morrison, we've been looking for you." "Admiral." Jake's brain tried to process this. "How did you?" "Ambassador Sslyth transmitted your evidence to Earth before the Council could stop him. Took some heat for it, too. They arrested him." Rodriguez's expression hardened. "The evidence shows attempted genocide, Morrison. The Council didn't just sabotage our colonies. They tried to ensure humanity would never expand beyond our home system." Earth's response was immediate. On the scanner, the Veracii ships were trying to flee. The human fleet didn't pursue, just held position, a wall of weapons and armor between Jake and his pursuers. "Are we at war?" Jake asked quietly. "No, but we're done being victims." Rodriguez leaned forward. "The Council wanted to keep us small because they were afraid of what we'd become. Well, they created exactly what they feared. Earth has recalled every colony ship, consolidated every resource. We're building a fleet that will make the Council reconsider every assumption they've made about humanity. That's going to start a war for sure. Maybe. Or maybe the Council will realize that they're better off with humans as equals rather than enemies." Rodriguez smiled, and it wasn't a particularly friendly expression. "Besides, we have something they don't." "What's that?" "Unpredictability. Chaos. The ability to survive in conditions that would kill any other species." She glanced off-screen. "I heard what your honey badger did to a Veracii assassin, and then to their Empress. Is it true?" Jake looked over at Badger, who was now awake and grooming himself, completely unconcerned about the fleet standoff happening around them. "Every word." Rodriguez laughed, a genuine sound of delight. "Then you understand, Morrison. The Council wanted to judge us based on their rules, their standards. But we don't play by those rules. We never have. We're the species that domesticated wolves and turned them into pets. We're the species that looked at the most hostile environments on Earth and said, 'I think I'll live there.' We're the species that makes friends with honey badgers." She straightened in her chair, all business again. "Welcome aboard the Indomitable Spirit, Mr. Morrison. Your evidence is going to change the galaxy. We're going to make sure you survive to see it." The Dreadnought's hangar bay opened, a beacon of light in the dark. Jake guided the persistence home, Badger chittering contentedly beside him. The galaxy was about to learn what humanity meant by the phrase, "It's not the size of the dog in the fight." The Galactic Council chamber on the neutral world of Concordia was the largest political arena in known space. A vast amphitheater designed to hold representatives from 500 species, all arranged in concentric rings around the central speaking platform. Today it was packed beyond capacity. Jake Morrison stood on that platform, Badger's carrier beside him, facing the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. Behind him on massive holoscreens played the evidence. Documents, communications, satellite footage of sabotage operations. 300 years of systematic suppression of human expansion. The Council Overseer, a massive being called a Thren whose species was older than most recorded history, gazed down at Jake with eyes that had witnessed empires rise and fall. The evidence is troubling, but the human delegation demands more than acknowledgement. They demand reparations, territory, council seats. His voice rumbled through the chamber. Explain why we should grant any of this. Jake took a breath. Around him, thousands of alien beings watched. Some hostile, some curious, all wondering what this young species would do now that they held the galaxy's attention. Because you need us, Jake said simply. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The council was founded on a principle: stability through control. You've maintained peace for 10,000 years by ensuring no single species becomes too powerful, too expansive, too unpredictable. Jake gestured at the evidence still playing on the screens. But in achieving stability, you've created stagnation. How many species have you suppressed? How many breakthroughs have you prevented because they threatened the established order? The Overseer's expression was unreadable. Stability is survival. The galaxy has seen empire builders before. Species that expanded without limit, consumed resources without thought, and left devastation in their wake. The Council prevents such catastrophes. No, jaque counter. The Council prevents change. There's a difference. He moved to the carrier and opened it. Badger emerged, padding onto the platform with his characteristic swagger. Several representatives in the nearest rings actually recoiled. This is Badger, Jake continued. He's a honey badger from Earth. His species is notorious for being fearless, aggressive, and completely unwilling to back down from anything. Snakes, lions, bears, even bees the size of his paw that can sting him dozens of times. By all logic, honey badgers shouldn't survive. They pick fights with everything. They have no sense of proportional response. They're chaos incarnate. Badger, as if to prove the point, started grooming himself in front of the most powerful governing body in the galaxy. But you know what? They thrive. They've existed for millions of years because their refusal to be intimidated, their absolute unwillingness to quit, makes them apex survivors. Jake looked up at the Overseer. Humanity is the honey badger of the galaxy. You tried to suppress us because we're unpredictable, aggressive, fast expanding. You saw us as a threat. Are you not? The Overseer asked quietly. We're an opportunity. Jake's voice rang clear through the chamber. The galaxy has been stable for 10,000 years, yes, but it's also been static. No major technological breakthroughs. No significant expansion into unexplored regions. No challenges to the established order. You've achieved peace through control, but you've lost innovation, dynamism, growth. He picked up Badger, who tolerated this with unusual patience. Humanity brings chaos, yes, but we also bring adaptability, creativity, the willingness to try impossible things just to see if they work. We make friends with creatures that should terrify us. We turn enemies into allies. We solve problems by doing things that by all logic shouldn't succeed, but somehow do. Jake set Badger back down and faced the Council directly. So yes, you should give us reparations. Not because you owe us, though you do. Not because we're threatening you, though we could. But because the galaxy needs what we bring. It needs chaos. It needs unpredictability. It needs someone willing to ask, why not? When everyone else says impossible. He smiled. It needs honey badgers. The chamber erupted in debate. Some voices angry, some supportive, all passionate. The overseer raised a massive hand for silence. When it came, he looked directly at Jake. The council will deliberate. It was, Jake knew, the closest thing to victory they'd get today. But it was a start. 6 months later, Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of humanity's first council-sanctioned deep space station, watching construction drones assemble the framework of what would become a joint human-alien research facility. The council had granted humanity most of what they demanded: reparations, 3 council seats, and the right to expand into previously restricted territories. In exchange, humanity had agreed to share their chaotic, problem-solving methodologies with other species. The first joint projects were already showing promising results. Solutions to problems that had stymied council scientists for centuries, solved by humans asking, "But what if we tried it this way?" Badger sat in his custom viewing seat, watching the construction with what Jake liked to think was approval. The honey badger had become something of a legend across the galaxy. The tiny Earth creature that had bitten 2 of the most feared predators in known space and lived to tell about it. "Ambassador Sslyth sends his regards," a voice said behind him. Jake turned to find Admiral Rodriguez, now serving as Earth's military liaison to the council. "How's he doing?" "Better than expected. The council dropped the charges after the diplomatic restructuring. He's actually been appointed as mediator for human integration efforts." She joined him at the window. "Turns out a lot of species are tired of the old guard. Sslyth has become the face of the reform movement." "And the Veracii?" Rodriguez's smile turned sharp. "Empress Nethix has been remarkably quiet. I suspect having your entire species' fearsome reputation damaged by a 20-pound mammal is a humbling experience." She paused. "Though intelligence suggests she's commissioned a study on Earth's fauna. Wants to understand what other surprises we might have." Jake laughed, reaching down to scratch Badger's head. The honey badger leaned into it, purring like a demented engine. "Let them study," Jake said. "They'll find we're a planet of honey badgers. Every species, every culture, we all share that same fundamental trait. We don't give up. We don't back down. And we definitely don't care how big the snake is." Rodriguez raised her glass in a toast. "To humanity." "To chaos," Jake corrected, clinking his glass against hers. Below them, the station continued to grow, a symbol of what happened when the galaxy finally learned the most important lesson about humanity. Never underestimate a species that makes friends with honey badgers, because honey badgers don't care about your rules, and neither do humans. If you enjoyed this story of human resilience and one very determined honey badger taking on the galaxy's most feared predators, check out more HFY stories on our channel. Hit that like button, subscribe for more tales of humanity showing the universe exactly why we're not to be underestimated, and drop a comment telling us what Earth animal you think would terrify aliens the most.